Hi, welcome to Get In, the connected vehicle podcast from BlackBerry. I'm your host, Steve Kovsky, and with this series, we'll be diving into what the future of transportation just might look like. Today, I'm happy to be joined by somebody who's helping shape that future of transportation and the experience that we're all going to have in our automobiles in hopefully the near future. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Gavin, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Thanks for inviting us on. Really exciting to be part of this. So I'm Gavin Johnson. I'm design director at a company called Active Matter. We're a customer experience agency, really looking at the user experience through lots of different sectors of design, from automotive right across the board into lots of different sectors, which we can dig into. But yeah, that's my role, is really looking at bringing a user-centered approach to design and technology, and how the two elements fuse around the human in the process.
One of the things we like to ask our guests on this show is, what was your first user experience behind the wheel of an automobile, and how has that changed? Can you remember back?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Yeah, thinking about it, my first the first car that I bought was a Fiat Panda. Back in the day, I don't know if you're aware of the Fiat Panda, but it was a pretty utilitarian vehicle back at the time. It had one of the things I remember about it the most was it had a sort of deck chair seats. So it had this sort of canvas kind of swung between two poles, which would made it very kind of utilitarian. It was very kind of base, but interestingly, I think thinking of the design of that vehicle, it was designed by Giorgetti Cesario, who a fantastic designer, fantastic industrial designer, certainly in the automotive industry. Set up Ital Design and designed the likes of the Mark I Golf for VW, worked with Aston Martin, worked across Ferrari. Really great pedigree. In fact, designed the DeLorean. And if you're of a certain age, you always dreamt of having a DeLorean, myself included in that. After watching Back to the Future many times back in my youth, the DeLorean was the thing to have. So worked across the board on lots of brilliant designed automotive products. I think the really interesting thing I found from that experience and from coming from a design perspective is that he designed so many things. Design crosses the board, crosses lots of kind of borders. He designed the Nikon camera, for example. He designed motorcycles. He designed wristwatches. He actually designed a specific type of pasta. So really interesting guy. Was voted the automotive designer of the century back in '99. So I like to think that I owned one of his pieces of work, and it happened to be a Panda. But that automotive was a really kind of utilitarian piece. I remember it being very base, but for me and my first car, it was the I think the thing I remember most about it was the experiences that it gave me. And I think that's got an interesting thought process. It was at a time where it was more about the car. It was more about the freedom, more about the emotional connection I had with that automobile and the freedom it gave me. I think my first trip was heading off to the beach and dropping those kind of canvas seats back and with a couple of mates and sleeping over and that freedom it gave me. And I think over the years, the cars that I've had have got better and got more technology in them and certainly more comfort in them. And thinking about my car today does a lot of things for me. It does, it'll park for me. It keeps me a safe distance away from whatever's in front of me. It will keep me on the straight and narrow or the curve, depending on what I'm doing. But I think that the thing that that I remember most about that first car was that freedom. And I think with all of the technology that's happened, kind of since that point, we've got more comfort, we've got more safety, we've got more more features and more functions, and it's become a really experiential point. But I think we're at a tipping point now, and working with or understanding some of the elements of technology that's coming on right now, with the likes of BlackBerry Ivy, allowing a real connected experience in that I feel that we're a real tipping point of a new experience, and the things that will change in the coming years will be really impactful to the human experience.
Well, we're very interested in talking about that tipping point. And I wonder how our experience of the car, I think you're absolutely right that it's where those cars took us and who was in the car. And those are the things that you remember much more than the discomfort, perhaps, or, having to roll down the window by hand. Things like that. Those sort of fade into the distance. But we do remember the experience that we have in those automobiles and in that transportation. Do you think that's going to change as cars do more for us? That we're going to feel less connected to the car or more?
I have a feeling that that all of the technology that gets added to the car is almost a two-edged sword. It gives us real power and at our fingertips, but it also takes away some of the feeling that you're driving, that you're in control, and you're engaged in a adventurous activity. And I think, thinking back to my days when I first started driving, it was an adventure. You were heading out almost to the unknown. And that's very different today because, I know where I'm going. I know my car's telling me where to go, and and it's telling me where not to go, and when to start and when to stop and when to recharge, etc., etc. And I think that's a fantastic technical achievement, and brings leaps and bounds to the human experience, across there. But I think there is something about the sheer kind of pleasure of driving, of being in control, of going into the unknown, that maybe is slightly different today than it was of the past, for sure.
Well, there's also those occasional, hopefully very occasional moments of sheer terror that we experience behind the wheel that are memorable as well. Hopefully those will fade with all of the capabilities of the car, that it's going to extend our lives. So there is a trade-off. How are you and your agency trying to shape those future experiences so that people do connect with their car, they connect with that brand, it's something that they value? What are some of the kind of design imperatives that you're working toward?
We're very much focused around human-centered design, and I think I think human-centered design has become has come fore of mind for a lot of companies. When we started, sort of 10 or 15 years ago in looking at human-centered design, it was really a low priority for a lot of companies, and technology was the lead driver in some of the products. But I think that's changed a lot certainly in the last few years, and I kind of think that technology has enabled that change as well. That the prevalence of connected cars allows you the opportunity to trial things out, to shape your experiences to the user and the changing user. I worked on a project for an automotive, several automotive companies where the technology within the car was in a 5-year cycle of that car's development, and the technology that was in the modern cars was already 5 years 10 years out of date in sometimes before it hit the production line. Whereas today, I think the technology has allowed us to have connected cars where experiences can change and they can change over time, and they can reshape around that user with an over the air updates, which is amazing. And I think that sort of brought the whole industry from a design perspective on leaps and bounds in the last sort of 5 years or so, to the experiences that we've got today, which are some amazing experiential design. So I certainly think technology is driving that forward from our role, where we're looking at making sure that those technologies are really centered around what humans really want to do, and want to have from their vehicles, and expect from their vehicles as well. Can the vehicle understand the diary of that driver, and have they had a busy day, and what does that mean? And do we want to reroute them to a nice trip along the beach on the way home, so they're nice and refreshed when they get home to see their kids? And because we know that Wednesdays is a particularly busy day for them. So can we build that kind of personalization into these experiences, and give a connection to the driver that's that's really fulfilling in their life, and perhaps puts a different perspective on the vehicle and what that means to people. I think I kind of see that with technologies such as BlackBerry Ivy, you're almost getting a personal assistant, more than a vehicle. And I kind of see that experience where with the car can recognize that you're on a trip. It can identify that there are kids in the car. You're on a trip that's going over spanning a lunchtime. That maybe it can book you a table at a restaurant on the way. Just when the kids are getting hangry, and we all know those points in time. I certainly do. But and it can adjust that booking when depending on the traffic that comes. You're in. It could take your order, could give it to the chef, so you get your meal when you arrive. It can, whilst you're fueling the family, it can fuel itself, and as you drive off, it can pay for everything itself. And I think that very human experience, which is is quite different to a mobility experience, is a new relationship that we're going to have with our vehicles. And I think that's a really interesting point to see. What does that mean to people, and how do we design that experience so it makes sense to people, and it's comfortable for people, and that we and we're trusting that experience. And I think I kind of see this certainly a big need for designing for trust, and designing for people's expectations of what their vehicles can do. Now they're doing these very different things that we're not used to. They're paying for stuff themselves. They're paying for the toll roads as we drive through. And how do we know that they have been paid, and how do we confirm that all of the things that we're very much used to doing is this the vehicle's going to do for us. And there's, I think, a lot of design around that experience that helps people understand our new relationship with vehicles, and how that is moving forward. So it's certainly at a really interesting time, and I think some really interesting challenges and some amazing technology that's coming on stream.
Well, it's fascinating because some of the things that you're describing are beyond what most of us know that we want in a car. We don't even know that cars can do these things. And many of them, of the activities that you're talking about, we might not even be aware that the car is doing it for us, but we will be delighted by the results. And I'm interested in the process. How do you anticipate these needs that the consumers don't even know that they have? These wants that they don't even really recognize themselves yet, and design that into a vehicle. It seems fascinating to me.
As I was saying, a human-centered approach to the design that we do, and really that is about drivers, looking at users of vehicles, looking at people in general. You know, I mean, we do a lot of empathy mapping, so really understanding people's lives, and I think that the starting point in this technology is to understand people's lives and how does my product fit within that life, and so we'll look at drivers, we'll observe drivers, we'll observe them in the car and how they interact in the car. We'll observe them out of car and what they're doing in their lives, and then we'll look at mapping that journey out. And quite often, people will forgive technology. They'll say, "Oh, I can't use this." For example, mapping in a vehicle and navigation. Quite often, you'll observe people blaming themselves for technology, which is maybe not up to par. And I think, you know, navigation for in my perspective, in my opinion, base OEM navigation isn't up to the Google and the Apple. I know from my experience, this is my own personal experience, that if I want to get somewhere and I want to feel comfortable getting there, I'll plug my iPhone in and I'll use CarPlay to get to that destination, and I won't use my native mapping application. It's something that I trust, and maybe I don't trust my internal navigation so much. What we'd like to do is with that observation, with that empathy, with the kind of journey mapping, is see what stories come out of that. And I think from my perspective, when you collect enough stories, you start to see patterns in those stories, and then you can find those patterns are the things you either need to fix or you need to celebrate. You know, that you might find amazing things in stories that you never realized that your customers were using your product for, or you might find that there's a lot of people talking, you know, within their stories, talking about certain aspects where you realize actually this is maybe something we can, we can clean up, we can soften the edges of, we need to focus on, and in that, and I think as humans, we're all kind of attuned to telling stories and understanding stories, and that's where the real truths come out. So we certainly collect stories and look for stories, and that's a foundation point for our design work. When we're looking at prototyping solutions, we'll start with that base level stories and understanding that's where the issues might be. So that's where we come at it from a design perspective is really kind of start with the human, understand them, and then start to design out prototypes. We like to quickly test, get something in front of people as well. I think again there's an increase in these days of rapid prototyping. There are lots of tools available now for us to rapidly prototype, but it's really key to design, to put that in front of people, and to gauge their reactions quickly, and then iterate on that and build on that. Whereas perhaps times of old where there were more 6-month, 12-month design cycles that we perhaps were used to. I think that those days are very much in the past now, and it's very much about rapid iteration. But I would certainly say design is a real key aspect to that. I think we come across a lot of brilliant technical solutions, which when in our experience, when they're put in front of customers, they either are very complex because the design layer hasn't been added to them yet, and they perhaps don't garner an accurate kind of representation of what that technology can do with them. Whereas I think we start off from, I would say that being a designer, but if you start off with with a solid design foundation to your thinking, you can really gain some valuable insight from customers, because a well-designed product should be easy to use. It should be really kind of fit within their lives. And I think, design, to quote another fantastic designer, good design is as little design as possible. And I think, that there's a danger as well, to a degree, in certainly, in lots of areas, but automotive, not, as much as anywhere, is that things get over designed. And again, there's lots of richness. There's huge screens in our cars now. There's screens are getting bigger. Screens are taking over. They need design then, but also, we should focus on great design being as little design as possible to get the user to use that feature, use that function in the most frictionless way possible. That's our philosophy around creating something that's as seamless, gets the job done, meets the need, hits that emotional boundary with as little design as possible. With what can we design out is as much as what can we design in is a key aspect.
Well, there's a story that you told me when we first spoke that, and I'm a big believer in stories as well. But this is an engagement that I believe you've been having with a luxury brand, and talk about frictionless. This is somebody getting from point A to point B, and not necessarily all in the automobile. They're also integrating other forms of transportation, but how to make that as comfortable and as seamless as possible. Could you tell me a little bit about that experience for the traveler and how you're designing that?
I guess we sort of started with the concept and the auto manufacturer really wanted to understand the lifetime value of a customer, and what could that be. And I think this sort of follows a lot of technical platforms now. A customer is perhaps more than an owner of your vehicle now. They're connected into your ecosystem. And what we started to think about, well, okay, if I was the owner of the OEM, what would I want my company to be doing for me? So maybe I think about it in that way, and maybe I think about, okay, I'm on a trip through Europe. For example, I need to get to a destination. I pick up I go down to my garage. I take the car out the drive and hit the road, and I've got everything set up how I want it to be set up. But maybe there's traffic on the way, and there's bad weather on the way. I need to get to my destination. Snow, let's say in Canada today. I'm blocked, so I can pull up my vehicle. I can then pick up public transportation. I can get a train. I can travel the next couple hundred miles on the train. I can get off my train and pick up my next vehicle from the same manufacturer that's got all of my settings set up how I like to have them. I'm listening to my favorite BlackBerry podcast, and I pick up where I left off. And I get in the vehicle. It's the same. I'm traveling along. Maybe I get to the airport. I'm flying to the US. I can pick up. I can pick up where I left off. I make my flights. I land. Concierge gives me the key to a new vehicle. Again, it's completely set up to how I want it. I get to my destination, have my meeting, and I can drive back. So the thought of what would an experience be like in a total mobility life cycle that's around the human and how they want to act, and the car is part of that experience, but maybe it's not a single car. Maybe it's a connected set of vehicles that I have access to. And what would that look like? So we started to look at that experience and really kind of think about all of the other things that might happen if my car's detected that there's a mechanical fault. I'm going to break down. It directs me to a place to pull over where another car is waiting for me, that I can just zip over and carry on my journey, and then it all gets settled when I get back home. And it's one way of looking at a customer value chain for the organization that's okay, maybe I'm bought into that service. Maybe I'm a lot more connected to that service, and maybe I don't want to just then sell my car after so many years and buy another brand, because actually I'm quite invested in this connected system, and it gives me everything that I need, and perhaps more than I need. So I think there are certainly, again, moving forward, looking at automobile ownership, and the ownership model, and what that looks like. Maybe there's again a lot of statistics around the Gen Z not wanting to own products, let alone vehicles and expensive products. So what does that look like, and how do we as an industry sector fit our offering around their lives and be very human-centered in that approach. So I think that's again, it's a running theme for us, but that human-centered approach kind of touches not only usage and how and the features and functions that you might want in your vehicle, but what's the ownership model like? Do I subscribe to this service? Do I is that different to ownership models? It maybe allows me to chop and change the type of vehicle that I have. Maybe in the city, I don't want a big car, but maybe on longer trips I do. So maybe I can swap in and out of different models of a certain brand, based on what I want to do with that, and based on my journey, and my specific needs. So I think we certainly look at a lot of these type of thinking processes, prototyping concepts, really to understand how do we fit our offering around the changing consumer, and what they want, and technology has a big part in that, but also services, solutions. What other things can you add to this service that makes me an owner of this brand, and a real brand advocate, and that's maybe beyond I'm a BMW owner or an Audi owner or a Mercedes owner, for example. Maybe I'm deeper connected, because I've bought into this ecosystem and I have real value, and that organization is giving me real value to my life, and that's what I value most from my vehicle.
Well, it's a very attractive prospect, and I can see having that experience turn you into a devotee of that brand, and you become an owner of that brand for life. Why would you want to do anything else?
I suppose for me, technology is, one of the beauties of technology is quite a leveler as well, and a lot of brands, there's not so much differentiation in engineering, for example. A lot of brands have fantastic engineering across the board. So how do we hook people into our brand and offer them something that's bigger than the vehicle that they're buying into as well?
Gavin, looking at some of the trends that are happening, one of the things that I think is really fascinating about the examples that you've given is all of those are really technologically entirely possible today. We're not talking about flying cars. We don't need full scale autonomous driving vehicles to make any of these happen. It's really about having the will to do this level of integration and applying perhaps artificial intelligence and some of these technologies that are available so that your car really ends up knowing you better than you know yourself and just provides these delightful experiences on a daily basis. As we look at some of the coming trends, autonomous vehicles, electrification, software-defined vehicles, what do you think are some of the most promising gems there, and how are they going to transform our future experience in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Certainly for me, I think that the understand that the AI element of vehicles and getting the vehicle to really understand you as a person and connect with you as a person is a really exciting point in time. And I think it's going to certainly change, as we mentioned before, change the experience, our expectations of the vehicle, and what it does for us. I think there's certainly thinking about design and experience that AI is. We're confident in the AI, that we understand what the AI is doing. And thinking about self-driving cars, I mean, I know Tesla are doing some brilliant work about how do you visualize what their AI is thinking, so that the human in the car isn't shocked at what happens and isn't kind of is not surprised, and because surprise is not something that you necessarily want when you're driving or you're sat in a car that's driving you. You don't want to be surprised at what it does. So I think there's some great some kind of great work there. I think that it feels to me like there's a lot of time that we're going to spend in our cars. It's going to be kind of vehicle dwell time is going to be a thing that happens. So I kind of think that, and that might be a lot of time in cars doing non-driving activity, and that might be waiting for it to charge, for example. What are we gonna do in that space? Fast charging will change a lot of that, but there's still going to be time that where that happens. But also with driverless cars or certainly getting towards autonomous driving, there's going to be a lot of time where we're in vehicle, not doing the classical driving activity. But also there's a bunch of other people in the vehicle as well. There's passengers. There's what's their experience like. There's kind of lots of kind of exciting things that will happen here. And I think that kind of prevalence of screens, of a connected experience of thinking about how you kind of buy into a vehicle. I know at CES that Sony brought out a vehicle with fantastic screens and sound, and you can imagine the new Sony movie getting first released on their network of Vision S's and being a completely connected experience that would be something that you might buy into. So I think there's a lot of great things coming on board and coming on stream, and I guess the really exciting things for me is around how we interact with all of that information, with all of that time that we have. What do we do with that? What is it going to be more entertaining? Is it going to? How do we but how do we connect with those cars? Going right back to that very first kind of thought about the vehicle being an enabler for me to go and have an adventure. How do we reconnect that adventure to the cars of tomorrow? And I think that's an opportunity for lots of lots of companies to think about that adventure and how we build that connection back into the car, and what's it going to do for me, and how am I going to connect to that experience. So I think there's those kind of real kind of interesting human traits and really exciting times where almost the technology can do anything for us, and as you say, that the car will understand us more than we understand ourselves. I think that brings some amazing creative opportunities, and I think as well, I feel like new players will come into the market as well, new maybe creative players that maybe with the with the technologies that we have now, with the openness. For example, the BlackBerry Ivory platform can bring in perhaps new players that have been excluded before because they didn't have the access to the technology. So what could we do with that? What could be if we brought in new creative minds and new creative thinking? What might be the possibilities that come out of that? Out of that experience, and if we thought about the car beyond the transportation in its own right, what could we do with it, and what are the possibilities there? So I think there's some really interesting experiential opportunities across the board to bring in that will be opened up by the technology that's coming in tomorrow's vehicles, today's vehicles, in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm very excited to see what companies like Active Matter come up with next to delight us as consumers, and also to solve problems for the vehicle manufacturers and for infrastructure and for all of the different players that now are going to be having these conversations within our vehicles and outside our vehicles, bringing us those new experiences. So thank you very much for sharing how your firm works, how your mind works, and how these things are going to shape the new experience of the software-defined vehicle.
That's a pleasure. And again, thanks for inviting us on. And it's been really, really great to talk to you. And it's going to be a really exciting time moving forward for us all. So thank you.
Well, that's the end of our episode for today. But if you'd like to get more information on the topics or our guest, check out blackberry.com/podcast. Get in. The Connected Vehicle Podcast from BlackBerry is available wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with our latest episodes.